Hi girlies, welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be all about Hermes and horses. So I have several Hermes items that are all horse themed to unbox with you guys today, and I also wanted to talk a little bit more about riding in the Bay Area. Several of you have asked me to talk a little bit more about my hobbies, whether it be golf or whether it be equestrians. I definitely wanted to share a little bit more about my thoughts and opinions as an adult amateur. So we're going to get right into the unboxings, but before we do, I wanted to give a quick shout out to today's part sponsor, which is Luisa. As you guys know, I've worked with Luisa so many times in the past. They're definitely some of the most stylish and affordable pieces out there. They're definitely unmatched in quality as they're long-lasting, hypoallergenic, water-resistant, tarnish-resistant, and sustainable. And their lovely pieces start at just $39, and the more you buy, the more you save. All their pieces come with free shipping and free returns, and they all come with a 2-year warranty as well, so you can definitely buy with peace of mind. Now, personally for me, I love Luisa because they offer me an affordable way to still be stylish while doing the things that I love. So for example, I'm at the barn at least 3 times a week now, and I am sweaty at the barn. It is so hot at the barn. It is dusty at the barn. So I'm not going to wear my nicest jewelry pieces to the barn, but I still want to look put together whenever I ride. So I love wearing my Luisa pieces out to the barn because I know that they can stand the wear, they're water resistant, they're tarnish resistant, and I still get to look good while getting my sweat on. So Luisa was kind enough to send me 2 pieces to share with you guys. So the first ones are these adorable earrings. I purposely matched it to the buttons on my Miu Miu cardigan, but isn't this combo so cute? So these are the Jessica Puffed Heart hoops. They come out in both gold and silver. Mine in particular are 14K gold plated. I think that these earrings bring a really cute warmth to any outfit, and they definitely represent my love for horses. I just love how dangly and playful they are, and definitely because they're kind of like a puffed look, the light reflects off of these hearts so beautifully, and I've already received so many compliments on these earrings. Next up, we have the Celine Eternity ring. So I actually own it in both gold and silver because I absolutely love it so much, but it is your standard Eternity ring. The ring on my index finger is 14K gold plated, and then the one on my ring finger is sterling silver. And if you guys have been following my channel, you know that I love mixing metals. You know that I love to have a really fun ring stack, and so these really thin and easily pairable rings are perfect to add to your collection. They can easily be worn on their own or stacked against another ring to give it an even more unique and playful look. They sparkle so beautifully, and I've worn my silver one out to the barn, and I'm using my hands a lot when I'm there. I'm grooming my horses, I'm petting my horses, they're in gloves, I'm sweating, and these have not lost any of their shine or shimmer at all. All of Luisa's pieces come in the most adorable and sustainable packaging, and they make great gifts. So please make sure to check out Luisa. All the links will be down in the description. Okay, moving on to some very exciting unboxings. So like I said, they're all horse themed, and they're all horse themed in different ways. So I guess maybe we'll go from smallest to largest, and that's kind of how they're stacked up with. And I will also share pricing because some of these aren't necessarily readily available online or through essay, so I definitely want to make sure that you guys are all aware. But the first one is obviously a little twilly box, and this is from their newest collection. This hadn't even hit the stores when I asked my essay for one, so he had made a note of it, and as soon as they came into store, he sent me one right away. But this is honestly the cutest little twilly. It is the Pony Pit Stop Twilly, and I absolutely fell in love with not only the color, but the design. So as you guys know, Hermes doesn't do too many like pink heavy or like really pink focused twillies. And this is definitely for my girly girls out there. So let's start with one side. So one side is kind of just representing almost like showing with your horses. So we have the cutie little horse here. I think it has a little fly cap, or it's just like a toy horse. And then there's a little Hermes ribbon here. There's a lot of little foliage and pretty flowers on the rest of the twilly, and they have these really kind of bright pops of green and yellow sprinkled throughout, and there's these like cute little, I don't know, animals or something. They look like bugs or birds or something like that, but this side is super cute. It's definitely kind of like foliage and floral focus with the cutest little horsey on one side. And then on the other side, we have like a little Hermes tack room going on. So I think these are like toy horses here. Then we've got like our tack room. We have the same horse with a different color fly cap. And then we have ribbons. And then kind of like the tack room portion with horseshoes, different farrier materials it seems like. And then it looks like maybe we've got bits, bridle, curb chains, and things things like that. Right in the middle, we've got a little saddle, it seems, and then here we kind of go into someone's like property. They've got a little house, outdoor arena. We've got some little horsies walking around in the background. And isn't the design overall just so cute? It really pays homage to Hermes's kind of equestrian roots. And as someone who does ride and is familiar with all these equestrian elements, it's so fun to see them in the most cutest design possible. The pony pit stop twilly does come out in different colors if you're not a fan of the super girly pink, but I just thought that this was so cute and I knew I just had to have it. Honestly though, these days Hermes is feeling so expensive because US did get that special little tariff price increase, so we are a little bit more expensive than other places too. So the twillies are now $250. I think in 2023 when I first started shopping at Hermes, twillies were going at either $210 or $200. So in 2 years, they've gone up $50, which is pretty hefty. And although they are one of the cheapest things that you can buy at Hermes, they are definitely a trap. I often buy multiple twillies every time they come out with like a new collection release, and they quickly add up in price. But I was definitely thinking a fun pop of color either on my Kelly 25 or my Baton Birkin 25 would be good because they are pretty pale and like plain bags in itself, so it's always fun to accessorize with a cute little twilly. Next up is something very special, very coveted. I've already unboxed it on my TikTok, so if you don't follow me there, go follow me because I often unbox things much more quickly than I do on YouTube. But from the box, I'm sure you guys already know what it is, and when I say it's a new release and it's definitely a hot item, you guys might have already seen some pictures floating around on the internet already, but it is one of the new rodeo charms. So Hermes recently released these cutie little rodeo charms that are called rodeos. It might be because they're wearing robes. We call them like horse blankets or saddle blankets. But multiple colors were released already, and this one is a particular color that was released. It wasn't actually my top choice though. My top choice of color was actually one of the cray ones, either the cray body with the Jean Milton blanket or the cray rodeo that had the silver studded blanket. I think both of those are so cute. But as soon as I saw this one, I knew I still wanted to get it because this is one of the few rodeos that actually has contrasting colors where the blanket is a very much darker color than the actual rodeo. So the particular colors for this rodeo, the horse is in Jean Milton, and then the blanket is a mixture of blue nude and blue tie. And currently Hermes has released 2 different blanket designs. So this is one of them, which is the heart rodeo because it has a little heart on the blanket, and then the other one is like the kind of like rock star studded one where they have studs of either silver or gold. The blanket is also 100% removable, so you are able to mix and match if you wanted to. And what's so funny is that the horse underneath is naked. So normally you guys know that rodeos either have a saddle, so it's not a naked horse, or has wings, which I guess a winged horse is also a naked horse, but there's always something on top of the horse. But I don't know, I find it so funny that this guy is like completely naked and it's so cute. So if you wanted to, you could just have this guy on its own on your Birkin or Kelly, and I love that there is a contrasting color between the tie and also the horse. And then you can also pop this little blanket onto a different horse. So honestly, I think that this would look really good maybe on my noir rodeo or something like that. Again, it's just so cute that now these are totally customizable charms. Now, these rodeos are quite expensive. They are definitely a step up from your regular rodeo, and I do think that it's probably because there is a significant amount of leather that goes into the blanket portion. So the inside is fully leather lined as well. It has a little bit more rough texture than the outside, which does feel almost like smooth swift leather, I want to say. And then of course you have a little bit more technicality coming into sewing on the heart, sewing the edges, and this part is like totally open for your little horsey tail to go through as well. So it's definitely a piece that probably takes a lot more time than the regular rodeo or Pegasus, and therefore it's a higher price. Here she is put back together again, and I will post a little picture of my Noir Birkin 25 that is featuring this gorgeous little rodeo, and I think it's so cute because the Jean Milton pops so much against the Noir, but then again it's kind of all tied down together and it feels really harmonious because of the dark navy and blue tones. Okay, moving on to price. Are you guys ready? So the heart rodeo is actually the cheaper of the two. Remember I said that you could either get the heart version or the studded version, and the rodeo heart retails for $970. So with San Francisco tax, it came out to $1,053.67. So that is a charm that is basically worth the price of a bag. Now the studded one is even more expensive, but I think only about like $150 more expensive. I don't know if I should be saying only, but it is a very expensive charm. Do I think it's worth that amount of money? I don't know. But again, as someone who loves Hermes, especially from like an equestrian standpoint, these little horsies do have a special place in my heart. And so for me, I do think it's worth the splurge a little bit, but I don't know how many of them I could add to my collection. All right, moving on to these two items, and to give a little bit of preface, they are from the equestrian line at Hermes and they are fully for a horse. These are not items for me. So going on with the very first item, I don't think you can tell what it is at all from the box. Again, these two I actually couldn't find online on the website. I found them online through like other country websites, and then I just asked my SA to source them for me. So this one actually came from a store that's not my own home store in SF, but we have something very cute and still very practical. So here it is. Still gets its own little dust bag, but it's a little brush. So this little brush is sold under the Hermes equestrian line, specifically for the horse, because under the equestrian line you can get things for the horse and you can also get things for the rider. So this is obviously for the horse. This one is called their soft mini brush. Again, I did not see this on the website at all. I actually found it on the UK website, but it is made of beechwood, does have the Hermes hot stand on top of it, and then these are supposed to be made of pig bristles. I don't exactly know what that means, but it did say soft mini brush, so I thought this was going to be a soft brush. Typically when you groom your horse, there's 3 types of brushes you use. The first brush you might use is called a curry comb. It's made of plastic and it's supposed to kind of get the dirt that's kind of in the undercoat. Then you would go in with something called a hard brush. Those are brushes that have really, really stiff bristles. They're supposed to, again, kind of penetrate the coat and get all the dirt from inside. And then you would follow up with something called a soft brush, which has normally very, very, very soft bristles, and it's supposed to kind of help with the shine of your horse's coat. So this was labeled as a soft brush, and this is actually my first time unboxing it, and it's not as soft as I would have expected. So if you guys are equestrians or if you guys do ride horses, it would be aware, because I originally bought this as a face brush, because typically you would only want to use a soft brush on your horse's face. It's a little bit more of a sensitive region of your horse's body, so you want to be careful when you're kind of grooming your horse's face. And a lot of soft brushes are actually kind of on the bigger side. If you look at Hermes' website, actually they do sell soft brushes from the equestrian line, and they're a little bit big because they're supposed to also be worked on the body. So I thought that this would be a really nice handheld size to be able to work around my horse's ears, around its mouth where the bridle makes contact with its face. So I will definitely try this out, but again, it's not as soft as I would like, but it's also not as hard as a hard brush. So I'm kind of confused. It's like an interesting in between. But yeah, I will try this out. Hopefully my horse does not throw a fit, because it's a little bit on the harder side, and I will report back. So in the grand scheme of things, Hermes equestrian items aren't actually as like egregiously priced as you might think. They're definitely on the higher end, but some things are still kind of within the realm of luxury equestrian items. For example, like the Hermes fitted custom saddle isn't like way, way, way more overpriced than other really nice saddle brands on the market. They're actually pretty like quite comparable. Now these brushes, like horse grooming brushes, you do not need to spend a lot of money on them. So these are definitely pricey for what they are. But this particular mini soft brush was priced at $115. So again, it's not like crazy. It is maybe crazy for a brush, but in terms of the grand scheme of what Hermes sells as a product, $115 for a really solid, well-made grooming brush that can last you years and years and years is not bad in my opinion, because you can get makeup products that are easily dispensable for more than this. So I am still pretty happy with my purchase. Next up, we have something bigger, but it's in a very similar vein as to the last product. So let's open her up. Inside is going to be a pretty big dust bag. It almost looks like a shoebox, but inside we have a monstrous grooming brush. So like I said, Hermes does sell the 3 types of grooming brush you would use on your horse. The one that I showed you is supposed to be a soft brush. Now this one is the hard brush. Again, I love the Hermes hot stamping here, and it feels really good in my hand because it does have these little divots in the beechwood that make it a little bit easier to hold on to. And this is a big size. Typically, I would say that hard brushes aren't this big. I would say they're closer to maybe 3/4 the size, but I feel like I could get a lot of grooming done very quickly with the size of this brush. Now on the Hermes website, the official name I believe is called their stiff brush. Again, it's using beautiful beechwood, and then these bristles are actually, I think, supposed to be like plant-based, and they're super, super coarse. Look at the size difference of these two brushes. They're absolutely massive, but I, again, love that they're kind of united with the hot stamping of the Hermes, Cellier, Paris, because they do sell brushes that actually have a leather component to them. The leather component does jump the price significantly, and then there's actually no kind of hot stamping of Hermes of any kind, so if you just took a look at it, you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell that it's from Hermes. The curry comb and the regular soft brush in particular do have those leather components, so I think I do want to get them down the line, but for now, I'm very happy with these two very useful brushes. Now, you might be thinking, big brush, big price. Well, actually, it's not that much more expensive than the other brush. So this particular stiff brush retails for $155, and I'm pretty sad because it actually jumped up $30 in price, and I'm pretty sad about that because that was due to the tariffs, I think, because I was watching another equestrian TikToker who had recently unboxed a lot of Hermes kind of goodies and tack for her horse, and when she bought it, it was only $125, and she only bought it, I thought, like a couple months before I did, but I guess not. And it's already jumped to $30 in price, so it's going to get even more expensive from here, I'm sure. Also, a little unrelated, but on the theme of brushes, I did also want to share that I also own the Hermes dog brush. Now, this one is obviously for your dog, so it does have metal bristles, but I would definitely say that this kind of brush is more well suited for a dog that has a little bit of a longer coat, because Bori has a very dense, short double coat, and so this kind of brush doesn't do much for him, so I'm actually thinking about giving it away to one of my friends who would make much better use out of this brush. I believe this currently retails for $135, so all the brushes are kind of in that price range. Now, I did want to talk a little bit about my background with riding, if any of you guys are interested, because riding is definitely a pretty tough sport to break into, and the main reasons why it's difficult to break into is definitely number one, money. It's an incredibly expensive sport, and then number two, I think it is probably time and convenience. A lot of barns are located kind of far outside of major cities, so you're going to have to drive a lot, and you can only like practice with your horse pretty much. Of course, you do your own home training and gym training to make sure that you're strong enough to get on top of your horse. You shouldn't treat your horse like a gym, but then taking the time to go back and forth to the barn, making time for shows, making time to just bond with your horse. Like, this is a huge time commitment that a lot of people aren't willing to do. And again, it's like probably the easiest way to just set money on fire. You're not going to get much of a return on horseback riding unless you're on really upper echelon of horseback riding. For people like me who are mainly doing it for pleasure, who are mainly doing it just because I love animals, it's a sport that I'm going to pour an incredible amount of money into and not really get any money back. But I did not have a traditional start to my riding in any sense, so I wanted to encourage any of you guys out there who are even thinking about it to just give it a shot, because honestly, it is such a rewarding sport. So I've always loved animals from a young age. I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to own a dog. I just wanted to be around animals all the time, but I actually grew up with a single mother in a 3-person household with my older brother, so there was really no money to be spared in extracurriculars or anything like that. My mom didn't have time to drive me anywhere after school. We obviously didn't have money to put me into like horseback riding lessons, so for a long time I just really kind of admired horses from afar. On some rare occasions I did get to ride some horses. So for example, my 4th grade teacher knew that I was like obsessed with horses, so she actually rode herself. So one time she brought me to her barn to ride her horse, and that's actually where I learned I was severely allergic to horses. Like, on top of that horse, my entire body broke out in hives. I couldn't breathe. I was like crying, not because I was sad or anything. I was absolutely loving the moment, but I was crying because my eyes were so puffy. And so obviously riding was not feasible in terms of time, in terms of money, and also in terms of health. My body was clearly not really equipped to ride, but I still never let that hinder me. I was also a Girl Scout, so on very rare occasions, I would get to go to Girl Scout camp over the summer, and for one of those days, we'd get to ride a horse on a little trail ride. I was absolutely enamored by horses. I read horse books, but it was always just kind of like a pipe dream for for me, something that probably didn't seem very attainable, and that's kind of just where I left it at. But then when I moved to California in 8th grade, I met some friends, and luckily I did get to move into a pretty affluent neighborhood. So a lot of my friends had connections and hobbies that I could never really dream of having at the time. So I met several friends who actually rode horses. They had their own horses, and so they would let me come along. They let me go out into pastures, help catch their horse, help groom their horse. And that's kind of where I first started to get a better understanding of what it would actually be like to ride a horse, to own a horse, and possibly dip my toes into the equestrian sport. But again, at that time in middle school and high school, I still did not have any money to take lessons. So again, I was just basically kind of watching from afar. And of course, with high school, I was busy with a ton of other extracurricular activities, getting ready for college and everything. So my first actual serious start to riding was in college, and this is where I encourage most people to be able to start riding, because many colleges participate in something called IHSA, which is the Intercollegiate Horse Show Association. So this is where colleges allow their students to compete in horse shows, very similar to competing in any other kind of collegiate sport. A lot of colleges will also help subsidize costs of the sport because each sport gets a little bit of budget from the college. So that was the first time in my life where it actually became affordable enough for me to be able to take lessons once a week during the showing season. And at that point, I was a 100% true beginner. Of course, I'd been on top of a horse, but I'd never received formal instruction. That was the very first time I received formal instruction. And to be part of IHSA, you also have to show. So they show in something called equitation. So there's many different classes that you can participate in. The easiest class is walking and trotting. That's the most beginner class. And then we'll go up to a walk, trot, canter class. And then we'll go over to the over fences categories, and then the fences will be set at different heights depending on your skill level. So I obviously was a true novice, so I had to compete and show in the walk trot division. But again, I thought that it was such a special and unique experience because usually showing is something that's pretty unachievable for many people because it's very expensive, right? You have to trailer your horse to the show. You have to bring your trainer. You have to pay training fees. You have to pay for feed and board for your horse. You have to pay for the show entry fee. And so to be able to be part of a program that is covered everything for me, right? Like all my teammates were really like well-ridden people. They had been riding for almost most of their lives. So they know exactly what they were doing. My trainer knew exactly what they were doing. They would trailer our horses across state lines. I didn't have to do anything but also drive and follow them. And then like the showing fees and everything, that was just included in like the one-time fee that I had to pay for the year to compete in IHSA with my team. So I honestly couldn't be more grateful for that experience. But the one thing that I was really kind of regretful about is that I did get lessons once a week, but the lesson quality and the quality of instruction that I received was pretty not great, I would have to say. I was riding in these group lessons, and I was typically placed with either my teammates or just like some other random people who were riding at the barn. And so there would be like a vastly different level of skills in that group that I was riding with. And so typically the more advanced riders would get a lot more attention because they're working on some more technical things. And I rode IHSA for, I want to say, like 2.5 or 3 years. And I really couldn't do anything but walk and trot. So I was not good at my canter. I at best went over a tiny little cross rail a couple of times, but I was like not jumping at all. My form was like not very good. And it was just because riding once a week is not really going to help you improve in anything. Like imagine doing anything once a week for an hour. You're not going to get good for a very, very, very long time, if at all. And then number 2, I really do think that individualized attention is super important in this sport because you are balancing on top of a moving animal, and a lot of your body needs to be doing different things at different times. So if you're just guessing at what you need to do, most likely it's not going to be correct unless you're a genius at riding horses to begin with. And so I'm really sad that it's not a waste, I would say, but I'm really sad that I didn't make more progress in those years because I think I could have been a much better rider now if I did have a trainer who cared a little bit more about me. But then graduating college, and I got really busy with my career and my job, and I just really thought that I would not ride horses again, honestly. It's a luxury. It's not something that I need to do. And so I kind of really put it on the back burner and did not think about it again. But definitely in 2025, I was feeling like a strong burnout, I would say, just from working, and just I felt like I was kind of just losing my sense of self, and I wasn't doing that many things that were targeted towards my mental health or making sure that I was happy. And so definitely this year I made some resolutions to get back into things that had once brought me joy, but I am no longer doing. So that's a lot of things, right? That's like riding, that's golfing, that's like reading books, writing poetry. I had all these hobbies that I kind of put aside for a long time, and I wasn't making a dedicated effort to pick them up. And so this year I was like, okay, like let's actually set some time aside, set some money aside to pick up things that you really enjoyed. And so horseback riding was one of them. And again, it is really daunting because the sport is one that is just really hard to break into. A lot of people ride from a very young age, so they are really good riders. They already have like their established riding friend group and riding circles, and there's a lot of money that gets poured into the sport. There's a lot of drama at barns, and there's like a lot of different opinions about you should do this, you should ride like this, you should care for your horse like this, and it's sometimes a very toxic place to be, and I did not want any of that. So I spent a lot of time trying to find the right space for me. And so I have found a barn now that I've been riding very consistently and regularly at. It's down in Woodside, California. That is where a lot of really nice kind of showing barns are. And definitely there is a little bit of emphasis to like compete here, and that is definitely something I want to try doing as an amateur. It's not something that I ever want to make a career out of or I ever expect to be really good at, because again, if you want to be really good, you have to buy a really good horse. There's unfortunately very few stories where someone who doesn't have a lot of money can rise to the top in this sport. So that's kind of unfortunate. But again, I don't have any really strong ambitions. I just want to have this outlet where I can relieve my stress. I can get a really good workout in. I can create a bond with a very special animal. And can I have a place that's just really safe for me to come, interact with my barn mates, and just have a really good time. So I tried a lot of different trainers in the area. They all have different teaching styles, and I eventually settled on my current trainer because I felt that he was really encouraging. First of all, I definitely am the type of person that I want to be good at something, so I often will kind of like hide my like low points and weak points and mistakes because I don't want my trainer to catch on, and that often builds really bad habits because I'm basically twisting something to make it look right for a certain period of time when my trainer's looking at me. And then on the other times where I feel like my trainer's not looking at me, I kind of fall apart, and that builds really bad habits. So it was really important for me to find someone I was comfortable riding with, I was comfortable making mistakes in. I knew I wouldn't be judged and I would just be taught on how to do that better. The second thing was that my trainer owns really nice horses. So again, this is a team sport. A lot of people might think it's like an individual sport because you're riding alone, but it is a team between you and your horse. So no matter how good you are, if your horse isn't equally as good or better, you're not going to make a lot of progress in your riding. So it's really important to also have really good horses to ride and a variety of horses to ride. And I'll touch back on this in just a second. Number 3, he also really pushed me out of my comfort zone, and that can be good and bad for certain types of people. For me, I think a really good personality trait of mine is that I'm pretty fearless, I would say. So riding a horse can be a pretty scary thing, and I've fallen off multiple times. I actually recently got a concussion, and so I was kind of bedridden for a little bit of time, but I always get back on, and so far, luckily, I haven't had a really bad injury or anything, but oftentimes to excel at something, you need to be kind of like pushed outside of your comfort zone. So even on my very first ride with him, I told him like, I have not ridden in a while. Like I am pretty bad. I'm a very much beginner. Just like treat me like a beginner. And he was like, okay, like go ahead, show me what you got. And then we rode around a little bit and he's like, oh, I think you can just like pop over some jumps now. And I was like, what? And so I popped over some jumps and he was like, wow, that was really good. And I was like, oh, that was way easier than I thought it was going to be. Of course, there's a lot of things that I need to work out. And I do think that sometimes he also encourages me to do things that I personally do think are outside of my skill level. So that's like another conversation. But I really liked how he like believed in me, believed that I could do something, and then adjust kind of his plan and his lesson plan accordingly. And then lastly, I just felt like the other people who were riding at the barn were so nice. It's like the most lovely group of women. They're all so supportive. They all like instantly memorize my name, always greet me, say hello, always encourage me, say I look so good. And I have not met like a more encouraging group of women to ride with. And so that was honestly probably the biggest selling point for me. Now, those are the things that I would generally recommend you kind of like look into and evaluate when you are deciding if a barn is the right fit for you. And the next thing I do want to talk about is definitely the cost of riding. Now, the cost of riding varies greatly in the United States because California is absurdly expensive, and then once you go outside of California, I feel like it gets a lot more normal and a lot more affordable. Obviously, the cost of living plays a big part into how much it's going to cost to care for a horse here, and then also just like land prices these days in California are just astronomical and through the roof, so it's really expensive to just have a horse on a property and care for it. So if I'm being totally transparent with you guys, I would say if you can find a lesson horse to just like lesson on at a particular barn, you can expect like minimum $100, and then on the kind of like higher end, it's probably like $150 to $165 for a lesson. And that lesson can either be a group lesson or a private lesson. If it's group lesson, it might be like up to an hour. If it's a private lesson, it'll be closer to 30 minutes. So that's just for one lesson. And these days, it's getting harder and harder to find lesson barns, in my opinion, because it's getting really expensive to own a horse. And so a lot of trainers and barns these days are pushing their riders to either lease a horse or own their own horse, because then the rider is in charge of a lot of the care maintenance fees that goes into having a horse. So my barn is also kind of encouraging me to lease, and that is very standard for like all the barns in that area. I am personally pretty hesitant just because I don't have a lot of knowledge on like horse care and horse husbandry. Of course, the fee that I pay is going to 100% like cover like having professionals look after my horse. I just have to pay like vet fees and farrier fees and other things like that. So I personally don't worry that like I wouldn't catch something that's like wrong about my horse if my horse gets sick. I'm not worried about that. But at the same time, I do think that it is a responsibility on the rider to be able to identify certain things about your horse and then respond accordingly. And I just don't know if I'm at that stage yet, because I have only been riding consistently and like 3 times a week for the past 2 months. And again, leasing fees are incredibly expensive, and it's also really hard as a rider who is just starting out to judge whether or not the cost of that horse is worth it. So for example, like let's say they're saying, oh, this horse is worth $60,000. Like, I personally don't know what it feels like to ride a $60,000 horse and then compare it to a $100,000 horse and a $20,000 horse. Like I have now a general sense of what I can look for now that I've been riding so consistently, but at the same time, I'm still a little unsure, and I'm relying heavily on other people, but I've only known these people for a short period of time as well. So there's a lot of factors that I'm thinking about, but I've been quoted several lease prices already. And again, my barn has some pretty nice horses. So I have been quoted minimum probably close to $2,400 to $2,500 a month. And that's just assuming that there's going to be like no emergency medical bills. So I would just kind of budget maybe $2,500 a month. And then for the nicer horses, that can go up to easily like $3,000 a month. So that is really expensive to pour into an animal that I am half leasing. Okay, so these are half lease prices, which means that I can ride the horse 3 times a week. I don't own the horse. I don't get anything out of the horse other than getting to ride it 3 times a week. So that is $3,000 for 3 times a week for 1 month. That is way more than people's rent. That's way more than people's cars. Like, in a year, I can easily spend anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 to $50,000 for a horse that, again, I do not own. And that is just a yearly cost. So I'm just giving you full transparency of the cost of riding in this area right now. Again, that is for nice horses though. So please take into consideration, these are for like show horses. These are prices for people who are interested in showing. If you're interested in just hopping on a horse, having a good time, going on trail rides, getting pleasure rides, you can find way cheaper options. You can find people who just want people to come ride their horse because they don't have time and you basically don't have to pay anything. You can find people who are just casually lessoning their own personal horses. So there's a lot of variety in the area, but specifically the Bay Area, it will be a little bit more expensive. It gets a little bit cheaper as you go a lot up and a lot more down. But I definitely want to vlog a little bit more for you guys. You can get a little bit more of an understanding of why I love horseback riding so much and give you an insight if any of you guys are interested in starting the sport yourselves. But I hope you enjoyed this little unboxing and little kind of equestrian story time with me. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below, and please make sure to check out Anna Luisa. All the links will be down in the description. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll definitely see you in the next one. Bye guys!